Before we get started, please go over to Amazon.com and grab a copy of my book, Education and Justice. If you have an African-American son in public school, you need this book because I teach you the many ways that public schools mistreat African-American boys and what you can do to help your son. So go over there and get your copy immediately. All right, folks, I hope you had a really good weekend. Very good weekend. I hope you had a relaxing, enjoyable, safe weekend. All right, so we are starting a new week, and this video is not one that, especially the week of Thanksgiving, that I necessarily want to share with you. Certainly not trying to spoil your Thanksgiving weekend, but I am trying to bring something really important to your attention. And it's something that we have noticed for the past few months, and it's getting worse. And it involves us African-American people more than anyone. And so what am I talking about? I'm talking about how Trump's policies are literally pushing Black people into poverty. Literally. Pushing African-American people, men, women, and children, into poverty. And it's all by design. This is not happenstance. This is by design. And so we need to know what's going on so that we can push back, so that we can protect ourselves, so that we can do what's necessary to still not only survive, but to thrive and advance. We've been through worse. We've been through much worse. Okay, so we've seen worse times, but this is getting bad. And we've never been able to solve a problem by turning away from that problem, by running away from that problem, by putting our heads in the sand and acting as if that problem doesn't exist. It exists. It's real. It's happening. All right, again, Trump's policies are literally pushing Black Americans into poverty. And for some people, that is a serious issue because a lot of African American people are already in poverty. So this is pushing them deeper into poverty. And those who are not in poverty are being pushed into poverty just merely by Trump policies. And then when you add on top of that the affordability crisis, it's not good. It's not good. And we just got through the government being shut down and folks not getting their SNAP payments. And now we're going into Thanksgiving, and the jobs number from September, the jobs numbers, especially for us, are not good. We're going to look at all of that. So stay with me because you need to know what's going on, and we need to be aware and informed about what they're doing to us so that, again, we know what we need to do to get through this period and to thrive. Because listen to this. Whenever there's a crisis, there are always opportunities. Let me say it again. Whenever the country is going through hard times, that is the perfect time for some people who are smart to make money. Don't forget that. Crisis always brings opportunities. All right, so let's go to an article that talks about the unemployment situation of so many African American people, and especially women. Let's go to another screen. We're going to talk about that. And I'm just really saddened for these women because, again, we're right here at Thanksgiving, and a disproportionate percentage of African American families have women as head of households. So a lot of the women that you see in these statistics and things that we're going to see here, they don't really tell the story. These are just numbers. What I want you to understand is there are people behind these numbers. There are children behind these numbers. So before I forget, do something today, tomorrow, to help needy families. Let me say that again. Please do something today, tomorrow to help a needy family. Go buy some turkeys and hand out some turkeys. Do something to help families because you never know who's struggling. Even though you see a nice house and nice cars and trucks and all that in the driveway, trust me, there are a lot of African American people who already live close to the edge. And then unemployment, the way it's rising, is enough to push them over the hill. So don't assume anything. Or you can also call the Salvation Army, call the Red Cross, call some local place in your community that will be feeding people over this week and make a donation. Make a donation. Help some folks. And the more you have, please, the more I'm asking you to give. All right, now let's go through this article. Here it is. The exit economy is here. Black women are paying the highest price. This article is dated November 22nd, 2025. So this was Saturday. I think today is the 24th. Yesterday was the 23rd, Sunday, and so that would make Saturday the 22nd. So this article just came out. And it largely just came out because we just got the job numbers for September of this year. All right, so let's read this article. Since February, according to my latest analysis, almost 600,000 Black women have been economically sidelined. The November 20, 2025 jobs report makes clear this isn't a blip. It's a structural crisis. So again, as I said earlier, this is not haphazard. This is not happenstance. This is a structural crisis. This is in the fabric of our economics. And it is a crisis. The economy added only 119,000 payroll jobs in September. Revisions to August and July erased another 33,000 positions. The country actually lost 4,000 jobs in August, leaving just 187,000 jobs gained over 3 months, an average of 62,000 per month. That's a 3% slowdown from the previous quarter's already anemic growth. Now, we know the Trump administration does not want you knowing this. They don't want you thinking about this. All right, because they want to look as if the economy is so great. Trump loves to talk about how great the economy is, the greatest economy in the world. Well, the data does not support that. And the group that's suffering the most are Black women, which means Black children and many Black families. His policies have been horrendous for us, and we're still within the first year of his administration. All right, let's go. That's a 3% slowdown from the previous quarter's already anemic growth. Black women are being sidelined at scale. In other words, it's growing, it's increasing. Since February, Black women have lost 297,000 jobs. Another 220,000 remain unemployed, and 75,000 have been pushed out of the labor force entirely. I estimate that these forced exits alone are draining an estimated $9.2 billion from U.S. GDP this year. These aren't just missing paychecks. They represent lost productivity, lost tax revenue, and diminished national output. So it hits us immediately, but there's a long-term effect that's going to impact the entire economy. The Trump policies, the tariffs, and all of that is hitting African Americans hardest, especially Black women, and hitting us first. But it's coming to the country, and that's why economists are worried about this. The proportional impact makes the numbers even starker. Black women's labor force size is 5 times smaller than that of white women. So Black women make up less in the job market from the jump street. If white women had been sidelined at the same rate, my calculations show the equivalent would be 3.05 million white women economically sidelined. That's equal to the entire female workforce of Pennsylvania. Zooming out, I find that 341,000 Black women are still missing from the labor force since the pandemic began. This is the most educated female cohort in the country, and more than half are breadwinners for households with children. And that's the thing. Before white and Black conservatives show up on this video and say, well, they need to get off their behinds and go to work and do something for themselves and get off welfare. That's not what we're talking about. Black women are the most educated group in the country. In the country. So they're not sitting around getting a check. We're not talking about welfare queens. As a matter of fact, most people on welfare are white. And there are many, many more white women on welfare than Black women, many more. And the problem with, however, these many Black women being unemployed is because over half are breadwinners for households with children. So this ultimately will hit Black children. So again, please do something to help feed a Black family this week. Please. Erasing their economic participation undercuts today's stability and tomorrow's workforce. A widening pay gap masked by misleading numbers. The latest data show women's weekly median earnings fell in the second quarter of 2025, even as men's earnings increase, and that too is by design. This administration is trying to concentrate power in the hands of white men particularly. The result, women earn just 81 cents for every dollar men earn. Black women's gap is even wider, 71 cents on the dollar weekly and just 66 cents annually compared to white, non-Hispanic men. So we see 81 cents, most women, for every dollar that a man earns, but for Black women, it's even worse. Okay? It is 71 cents on every dollar and 66 cents annually. And then on top of that, census data confirmed the annual gender pay gap has now widened for 2 years in a row, the first back-to-back setback in decades. At the same time, inflation is gendered. In a reprieve for women's already thin paychecks, the current inflation rate for goods marketed to women is 50% lower than for goods marketed to men. That's a bit of good news. That's a sharp reversal from the prior month when women's inflation burden was 138% higher. Official unemployment numbers also disguise the depth of the crisis. Black women's unemployment rate rose from 5.4% in February to 7.5% in September, already more than 2 points above what the Federal Reserve considers full unemployment. But when accounting for the hundreds of thousands of women pushed out of the labor force entirely since 2020, The real unemployment rate for Black women is 10.23%. 10.23%. 1 out of every 10 Black women is unemployed. That's way above the national average. And this is, again, just for Black women. Jobs are growing where women are paid the least. The only meaningful job gains for Black women come in healthcare, food services, and social assistance. Over 10,700 positions in September. This is the sector where Black women are concentrated and also among the lowest paying in the economy. Average weekly pay in these sectors hovers around $530 to $1,200, far below wages in manufacturing, finance, or professional services. So the crisis is compounded and layered for Black women, hence Black families. Even within healthcare, Black women face some of the largest racial and gender pay gaps. Meanwhile, Black women lost 1,500 jobs in government, a more stable and higher paying sector, and saw zero gains in finance, transportation, or professional services. In short, they are gaining jobs where wages are lowest and losing them where wages are better. Again, we're talking about Black women. And then, of course, we know the Trump administration through the Education Department is recategorizing certain professional jobs as non-professional. That is another impact because these jobs tend to be heavily women and a large percentage of African American women. 700,000 women missing from the workforce. You see, it just keeps layering and getting worse, this crisis deepening. The November 2025 jobs report confirms the divide is still widening, just in a different direction than earlier in the year. As of the latest data, 673,000 women remain missing from the labor force since the pandemic began. In theory, the growth in the number of women eligible to work over this period should have expanded participation. Instead, participation remains depressed. By contrast, since February alone, 879,000 men have entered the labor force. The divergence makes clear the gap isn't closing, it's accelerating. And again, that is connected to Project 2025 policies. All right, which again wants to shift power and money, wages, wealth, and so on to white men in particular. Even as women's participation remains structurally suppressed, men are re-entering the labor market at scale, reshaping the workforce in ways the top-line numbers continue to obscure. And some of that just has to do with the fact that this white Christian nationalist regime that currently occupies all of government believe that, again, white men should be in charge and women, regardless of race, should be home. Should be home. And I don't have any bad things to say about stay-at-home moms. Nothing. That is one of the most important jobs ever. But at the same time, a woman who has a career and wants to be in her career and wants to, further her career should be able to do so. Should be her choice. I know with my family, my wife has been a professional woman for quite some time. All right. And that's her choice. And I kind of prefer that, in fact, having someone who is a professional woman. But I'm telling you, it is not easy because in addition to being a professional woman who works outside of the house, she no longer works. She had, we have 2 children and all the things that come along with being a wife and a mom. Okay? So stay-at-home moms, I celebrate them. That is not a job that is less than anything any man is out there doing. But again, it ought to be a woman's choice. On August 31st, when I last published an analysis of these figures, Black women were down 319,000 jobs, while white men had gained 365,000 jobs. That's what I'm telling you. Expanding the analysis to reflect men overall, the gap has only grown more lopsided. Black women are down 297,000, but men's gains have surged to 621,000. And again, this is not happenstance. This is by design. That's a 324,000 widening of the gender gap in 2 months, a 34% jump. Since February, the swing between Black women's losses and men's gains approaches 1 million jobs. So do you see what's happening here? Take the jobs from Black women and give them to white men and a few Black men, but mostly white men. And why so many Black women in these job positions? Because Black women are the most educated of all groups in this country. That is impressive, okay? So the Trump administration says, yeah, it may be impressive, but we intend to change that. Because in their minds, how did Black women get those jobs? DEI. Not because they are qualified, DEI. And so what did the Trump administration do? As I told you they would do in videos last year, they started firing especially Black people and then pressuring the private sector to follow suit. That's all Project 2025. Let's keep working this. Put differently, since February, the swing between Black women's losses and men's gains approaches 1 million jobs. That is directly the result of Trump Project 2025 policies. So that's the news here. Black women are not just losing jobs, but they're losing those jobs to white men in particular. Put differently, the labor market added the population of Boston in male workers while subtracting the equivalent of Greensboro in female workers. That is not a recovery. It is a redistribution of opportunity. Structural, not cyclical. This is not a cyclical slowdown. It's a structural divide. The labor market is being carved up with precision. Women, and especially Black women, are being cut out. Men's gains are being supercharged. You see? Cutting out Black women to make room for white men. I hate to say it, but I got to say it. This is what some Black people literally voted for. It's just that they didn't know it because they didn't pay attention to those of us who were screaming that Project 2025 would cause all this to happen. This divide threatens the very foundation of America's economic stability. An economy cannot remain resilient while sidelining its most educated women and breadwinner mothers. It cannot sustain Medicare and Social Security if over 1 million women are missing from the workforce. It cannot grow while concentrating Black women in the lowest paid jobs and locking them out of higher wage industries. All right, what must be done? The numbers point to urgent, actionable solutions. And here are those things that this author strongly suggests. Enforce pay and opportunity equity. In other words, women should make the same amount of money as their men co-workers. Rebuild inclusive pipelines into higher wage sectors like technology, finance, and government. Again, Trump's anti-Black, anti-DEI policies have stopped that, plugged up those pipelines of African Americans going into those jobs. Do you remember certain people saying that DEI only benefits white women? I told you a long time ago, that's bull. That's bull. Black people were benefiting from DEI as well. Moreover, Trump's anti-DEI policies target Black people. Require the Federal Reserve to account for job labor force exits, not just top-line unemployment in its models. And design stimulus not as across-the-board tax cuts, but as targeted investment to keep women, and especially Black women, working. The exit economy is here. If policymakers ignore it, Black women will continue to pay the highest price. And again, that will include children and some men. But the cost won't stop there, America. It will ricochet across households, communities, and the national balance sheet, eroding the very prosperity America claims to protect. No matter how hard they try to ignore us, white conservatives, white supremacists, MAGA, the Trump administration, the GOP, we're part of the fabric of this country and its economy. As a matter of fact, we have carried this economy since we arrived here. We laid the economic foundation of this country, and it cannot survive and definitely thrive without us, including African American women. Now, here are a couple of charts to show you what has gone on in the last 4 months with Black women in unemployment. You see, June, Black women were unemployed just a little bit under 6%. Asian women, well under 4%. White women, well under 4%. July, Black women's unemployment increased to over 6%. Asian, still under 4%. White women remain the same. August, Black women unemployment increased to well over 6%. Asian women unemployment decreased. White women remain about the same, just a little bit of increase. And then in September, Black women unemployment shot up to almost 8%. Asian women went up just a little bit over 4%. White women still remain under 4%. So again, if DEI benefited only white women, then why getting rid of DEI is hurting Black women the most? I explained this to you months ago when certain Black content creators were putting that false information out there. Trump's anti-DEI policies are hurting Black people especially. All right, another graph. All right, so the unemployment numbers. We just looked at the unemployment rate. Here are the numbers. For June, Black women, 634,000 approximately were unemployed. In July, that increased to 694,000. August, it increased to 739,000. In September, it increased to 830,000 unemployed Black women. And you see it's a steady increase every month from June to July to August to September. I think from August to September, it was about 90,000 or so. From July to August, it was about 40,000. And from June to July, it looks to be about another 40,000. So it really shot up in September. And we don't know what it's going to be like the next job numbers we get. So, as I said, Trump's policies are pushing Black people into poverty. And we see specifically they're pushing Black women out of the workforce and replacing them with white men. That is pernicious and hideous, quite frankly. Because again, a lot of African American women are heads of households. It's right around half of Black households are headed by Black women. So this will have a very, very serious impact on our community. And we're only 1 year into it. So what does that say? In addition to the things that the author said that need to be done right now, we got to gear up and be ready to vote in less than a year from now. And I say that because we need to start preparing for that now, making sure you're registered, making sure your name hasn't been purged from the registering rolls, and then helping 10 to 20 people, other African-American people get registered to vote. Because we got to try to put a stop to this. They are rolling back civil rights enforcement, jobs, and everything else as it relates to African Americans. We can't sit back and just let this happen. We must activate and unite and mobilize and push back against this at the ballot box. Should be voting in every election. Don't listen to these naysayers telling Black people not to vote, or that the Republican and the Democratic Party are the same. Those are lies. Those are lies. We don't need to pay attention to that. In fact, I just heard in a video recently, Dr. Boris Watkins relay a message that he said came from Dr. Claude Anderson saying that Black people need to come out of the Democratic and the Republican Party. I strongly disagree with Black people coming out of the Democratic Party. What I advocate is African Americans taking over the Democratic Party. I agree that there are problems. The Democratic Party has issues, but the Democratic Party has been the party that has championed Black rights and civil rights. I got a video that's coming out this week where I'm going to show you factually that the best way for us to stop what the GOP is doing is to vote, impact vote for the Democratic candidates who then can push back against what Trump and MAGA and Project 2025, the GOP, are doing. If you come out of the Democratic Party, you're not in a position to do anything. And if you come out of the Democratic Party and let the GOP do what it wants to do, It's going to get rid of all the civil rights, the voting rights, and everything else that we've used over the years to get money. How can we get money if we don't have the right to work? If we're being fired and replaced with white because we have no political power? No, don't listen to that. I'll have more to say about that in an upcoming video. In the meantime, I am Reverend and Civil Rights Attorney Augustus Corbett. Thank you for watching this video. And please stay woke.